Zuerst machen wir das da hier. Hier kann ich schauen, das ist richtig. Ach, und ich habe mir gestern mal so ein bisschen was zu diesem einen anderen Spiel angeschaut. So, Moment, wie heißt es? Murdered Soul Suspect. Ähm, Das scheint ein relativ interessantes Spiel zu sein. Werde ich auch irgendwann mal auf jeden Fall anfangen. Ja. Irgendwann mal. Irgendwann mal. So. Ah ja, die sind gerade dabei, in diesem Schrein einzubrechen. Und ja. So, Klink. Tomitake-san undid the padlock and placed it to the side. It's open. Thank you. At long last. Takano-san gulped with an unusual excited air about her. She gave the heavy door a shove. The sharp smell of mold and dust flowed out from the gap in the doors. I had claimed curses didn't exist. But, in this situation, I could believe in them. If we went into such a holy place with our shoes on, it feels like we could be punished somehow. How about it? Your accomplices too? You came all the way here, so why not come in and take the tour? It'll be a little field trip to a museum of precious cultural artifacts that conceal the secret history of Hinamizawa. And it's only open today. Hihi. Rewe verkauft Steam-Aufladungen. Rewe haben wir in Bayern, ja. Der nächste Rewe ist bei mir 10 Minuten oder so mit dem zu Fuß. 10 Minuten zu Fuß entfernt. Dass die Steam-Guthaben verkaufen, das habe ich noch nicht gesehen, aber in die Ecke, wo das ganze Zeug hängt halt mit iTunes Store und Google Play und was weiß ich, das ganze Guthabenzeug, da schaue ich nie hin. Aber werde ich beim nächsten Mal auf jeden Fall drauf achten. Finde ich nicht schlecht. We're not accomplices or anything. Aren't you interested though? Come on, let's take a peek. Shion said, predictably linking her arm with mine. But we definitely shouldn't be doing this. This is a holy warehouse, isn't it? He said ritual implements, right? I really feel like we shouldn't go in. Das ist Geld, um das Stardew Valley zu kaufen. Ah! Stimmt. Ich hätte eventuell das Geld, das ich heute für ein paar andere Spiele ausgegeben habe, die ich 80% günstiger bekommen habe, eventuell dafür ausgeben sollen. Ich habe mir im Endeffekt einfach mal ewig viel, 1, 2, 3, 4 Lego-Spiele und dieses eine Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate gekauft. Auf Humble Bundle, weil die da aktuell irgendwie so eine Aktion haben von, ich glaube, Warner Brothers Spiele, wenn du da 5 kaufst, sind alle um 80% runtergesetzt und so weiter. Und da haben mich halt 5 Spiele gerade mal 20 Euro gekostet. Aber die Spiele, die habe ich mir einfach mal so gekauft, weil runtergesetzt und an sich Lego-Spiele ja sowieso ziemlich cool sind und so weiter. Aber Stardew Valley würde mich an sich mehr interessieren. Habe ich mich richtig entschieden. Ja, aber ja. Stardew Valley kaufe ich mir dann halt nächsten Monat oder so. Oder eventuell auch irgendwann später erst. Mal gucken. möchte ich mich auch erstmal informieren, wie das Spiel an sich so ist. Weil nächsten Monat habe ich eventuell vor mir, hier Twilight Princess HD zu kaufen. Eventuell. Damit wir auch wieder ein neues Zelda spielen können. Und ja. 14 oder 15, was im Vergleich besser ist. Ja. Ja gut. Wir schauen einfach mal. Beziehungsweise ich krieg den Monat sowieso noch ein bisschen Geld. Eventuell kann ich es mir den Monat auch schon kaufen. Zumindest Stardew Valley. Ah ja, mal gucken. I'm a part of the Sudosaki family, so I have a good guess as to what we'll find in there. But I want you to see it too, Kei-chan. Want to show something to me? I thought it was just a ploy, but Shion's eyes looked entirely serious. Of course, she was the sort who could lie with a straight face. Of course, I was an average boy too. My curiosity was at least twice that of a normal person. Sleeping, forbidden treasures, never to leave this warehouse. Chances like this don't come around too often. If I had to choose, then I want to see. Until the locked door is open, though, I don't know about this. If you're not interested, Keija, then you can leave now. I think you'll wonder about it later, though. Tomitaki-san spoke after listening to our discussion, himself having sat down on the stairs to take a short rest. I'll keep watch here. Go in and check it out with them. I'm not too interested. But it might be pretty interesting for a young guy like you, Keiichi-kun. He said, laughing mischievously. There was no ill will in his laughter. Tomitaki-san, do you know what's in there? What's in here? Kind of. Takano-san told me all about it. Must be a pain to have to go along with your companion's unique hobbies, huh? Tomitaki-san didn't answer that, only responding with a pained smile. Takano-san had this kind of scary air about her. Like she'd drop absolutely everything else from something she had an interest in and go straight for it. But Tomitaki-san, on the other hand, seemed like the gold standard of what a normal person should be. Having him tell me so frankly to go check it out suddenly made the guilt feel lighter. Okay, but just a little. If it's not interesting, I'm leaving. You got it. Shion gave me another Mion-like wink. Looks like we're decided. Shall we go inside? Jiro-san, we'll leave this to you. Tomitaki-san waved his hand to see us off. The inside was pitch black, but Takano-san turned on the battery-powered lantern she'd brought, revealing a pretty cramped front room. What? Front room, yeah. It's dark in here. Everyone take care not to trip over anything. I appreciate the concern. Okay, doorman, keep a good watch. We're shutting the door now. Takano-san smiled spitefully, as if leaving Tomitaki-san out of something fun, and began to close the door. Man. Alright, everyone, have fun. There was a low, heavy and loud noise, and we were completely cut off from the outside world, and covered in silent darkness. Takano-san's lantern was the only light we had. It'll be fine. It's an outdoor lantern with backup batteries inside. It won't go out or anything. Looks like Takano noticed my uneasy expression. I couldn't help but blush a little and avert my gaze. Deeper inside there was a heavy and old but sturdy door, with solemn decorations on it. It was the last door sealing away what was within. Strange how it has an antechamber even though it's just a warehouse, isn't it? I believe it's set up this way so that you open one door at a time, never letting the room with all the tools be seen from the outside. Takano-san explained this, all fully impressed by the construction. But still, it's really dark in here. Ah, that over there, I spotted a circuit breaker hanging from a clump of wiring, clumsily attached to the wall. Oh, here. Isn't this the light switch or something? I flipped the biggest switch I can find, and with a click, the pitch-black room was illuminated by an old bare light bulb. Everyone scrunched up their faces as the sudden strobe-like brightness. Don't! Before she even finished, Shion slapped my hand and flipped the switch back. There was another loud click, and the room returned to darkness, with only the lantern for illumination. Ow! You can't, Kei-chan. We snuck in here, remember? If you turn on the light, it might give us away. I'm scolded by Shion fairly harshly. It looked like she was worried about whether someone had seen them from the momentary light. It's alright. It was only for a moment. Takano-san remained a relaxed adult. It seemed like she was convinced she could talk her way out of it if someone did see us. Let's go in. Here we go. There. The even heavier door opened, and this time it wasn't just the dust that came out with the air. There was also a nasty smell. One smell was like opening a dust-filled cupboard in the back of a kitchen that hadn't been opened in years. And the other smell, nasty one, was hard to explain, but it was like the raw odor of a fish market. From how the sound echoed, this room felt far larger than the first. Takano-san held up her lantern and revealed the contents of the expansive room. More! At the back wall of the storehouse, right in front of us, was a Buddha-like holy object, standing there looking down at us. I was taken aback by its unseen force, lit up by the slender beam of the lantern. That's the guardian god of Hinamizawa, Oyashiro-sama. It's far grander than the one at the shrine, Oyashiro-sama. The Spiel crashed. Oops, the game crashed. It would the crash report folder named blah 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 datum Uhrzeit next to game executable. It would be great if you'd send it to the developer of the game, Zoom. Oyashiro-sama, so this is the spirit protecting Hinamizawa. Oyashiro will nicht, dass ich Higurashi spiele. So ein böser Gott. Starten wir halt nochmal. So ein böser Oyashiro. Zack, 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 zack. So, gleich haben wir's. Bla 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 bla. So. Nein, jetzt sind die erstmal mit Lichtschalter, bla bla bla. So, jetzt Tür öffnen und bam. Oyashiro-sama, bla. So. Oyashiro-sama, so this is the spirit protecting Hinamizawa. The one guardian, the holy land of Hinamizawa from the impurities of the outside world, and the one delivering punishment after punishment upon those who attempted to sully the land with the damn construction. Ich mache hier mal Sicherheitsspeicher, damit ich nicht wieder alles durchklicken muss. falls es wieder abstürzt oder so. Es kommt davon, wenn man in die Kammer geht. Es ist allerdings richtig, ja. It looks like there are far more tools stored here than I thought, but this is so sad. None of them have been maintained. More unfortunate that they are in such a state. Even in the dim light, I could see a lot of strange objects lining the walls, ceiling and shelves. Ich möchte noch ganz kurz was gucken. Outputlog.txt. Ich will mal den Errorlog anschauen. Damit ihr auch mal schnell mitschauen könnt. Da hier. Das ist der Output-Log. Crash! Da ist Crash. Da ist der Crash. Warum denn? Low. Unused serialized files, bla bla. Unloading 0 unused assets to reduce memory usage. Loaded object now. Da. Dann Crash. Warum auch immer. Keine Ahnung. End of stack trace. Crash! Error. Sim get sim from address. Das angegebene Modul wurde nicht gefunden. Eine DLL-Initialisierungsroutine ist fehlgeschlagen. Okay, deswegen ist es abgestürzt. Okay. Sagt mir jetzt direkt nix. Keine Ahnung. Aber ja, deswegen ist es abgestürzt. Wegen einer DLL-Datei, die nicht gescheit geladen wurde anscheinend. Even in the dim light I could see a lot of strange objects lining the walls, ceiling and shelves. Takano-san, speaking as if in a trance, was infatuated by the various implements filling the dark room. They weren't very festival-like or traditional, but instead this was more like the workshop of a blacksmith or a carpenter. There were a lot of large wooden and metal tools packed in here. Putting it bluntly, it was all pretty boring stuff. I'd imagined there would be more artistic things in here. From the Heian period, but these are a far cry from being cultural artifacts. My expression betrayed my dashed hopes, and they caught on right away. Oh, is this not interesting for you? I'm not into literature or art, so I can look at this stuff, but I don't really understand its value. Phew. Keiji-kun, you really do look like you don't get it. I guess that's only natural. Takano-san reached into a paper bag that she'd been holding the whole time, took out a worn scrapbook and began to flip through it. Then just for you, Keiji-kun, I'll tell you an old story. It's a common tale in this region. If you go to the library, it would even be on their recommended reading list. Telling stories in such a dark, creepy place. She must have a horror story in mind. Jin's face belied nothing but calm. If she had the same personality as Mion, she'd have found fault with me being scared. I'll endure it for now and pretend to be calm. Okay? Alright, I'll read it. After confirming that I was going to be quiet and listen, she began to speak softly, like a kindergarten teacher reading a picture book. Long, long ago, in a certain village in the mountains, there was a swamp. This swamp was very, very deep. Some even called it bottomless. People said it was connected to hell, the land of demons. The rumor said that it was deeper than the ocean, and that anyone it swallowed would sink into the underworld, a bottomless swamp. Its name was Onigafuchi. Wait, I thought back to the story I heard yesterday about the sacrifices sinking into the bottomless swamp. Could that be the swamp she's talking about? So, then the village was Hinamizawa, right? You catch on quickly, that's right. Though it was called Onigafuchi village at the time. Onigafuchi village. That's a pretty inauspicious name. It evokes quite the image, doesn't it? I hear that the name was changed in the Meiji period. The name of the swamp connected to hell was called Onigafuchi, which meant the demon's abyss. And the true name of this village, Hinamizawa, was Onigafuchi village. The villagers belonged to that abyss, or to hell in other words. They lived their lives worshipping the swamp, said to connect to it. But then, one day, demons began to appear one after the other from deep in the swamp. The villagers feared that hell was overflowing. The demons mercilessly attacked the villagers. They could only watch in fear. They could do no more than hide themselves and tremble. Waren die komischen Dämonen da hier, diese komischen Aliens, die da mit ihrem UFO gelandet sind? Ich bin mir nicht mal sicher, ob das überhaupt richtig ist. Oder ob das einfach nur dummes Zeug ist. Kurzen Moment. Okay, jetzt habe ich mich ein bisschen gespoilert. Von einem kompletten Anime. Great Hinamizawa Disaster. Davon habe ich noch nichts gewusst. Jetzt weiß ich, wie teilweise die ganzen Arcs ausgehen. Mal kurz gucken. Okay, keine Ahnung, aber auf jeden Fall Aliens kommen öfters mal in der Serie vor. Ob das jetzt wirklich nur Halluzinationen oder sonst oder irgendwie halt so Geschichten sind oder ob die wirklich da sind oder da waren oder sonst irgendwie was, das weiß ich immer noch nicht. Ist aber auch schwer, dass ich das mal schaue, weil neben der eigentlichen, neben dem Higurashi Nonako Koroni, gibt's nichts anderes auf, zumindest nicht mal irgendwie einen englischen Dub oder sowas. Das ist alles immer nur mit Untertiteln und ich mag keine Animes, wo ich lesen muss die ganze Zeit. 20, 30 Minuten am Stück. Das mag ich nicht. Aber es wird wahrscheinlich auch kein Dub mehr geben, außer es machen irgendwelche Fans. Vielleicht quäle ich mich doch dann irgendwann mal durch, weil an sich interessiert es mich schon, aber es ist halt nervig zu lesen, wenn ich was anschaue. Naja. So, did someone exterminate them? Unfortunately, there is no Momotaro or Superman in this fairy tale. Then they get the whole village together to fight them? Ja, stimmt. Also ich meine, bei der Hauptstaffel, bei den ganzen Fragekapiteln, da gibt's gibt's auf jeden Fall englischen Dub. Ich weiß gar nicht, ob es vielleicht sogar einen deutschen Dub gibt. Da bin ich mir jetzt nicht sicher. Könnte ich mir aber vorstellen. Aber halt bei den ganzen anderen Sachen, also halt zum Beispiel bei Higurashi no Nako Koroni Kai oder sowas, also bei den anderen Kapiteln, also Antwortkapitel und was weiß ich und Zusatzdinge, alles entweder Original Japan oder halt dann mit Untertitel. Nix anderes. Das ist etwas schade. Aber ja. Heavens no! Ich meine im Endeffekt, wenn die Visual Novels dann mal draußen sind, alle anderen restlichen, die noch kommen, dann ist es eigentlich ja die komplette Geschichte. Weil in den Visual Novels sind ja auch die Antwortkapitel dabei und so weiter. Da müsste ich dann nicht mal mehr den Anime schauen. Beziehungsweise mich durch Untertitel quälen und so. Das ist eigentlich schön. Da warte ich auf die Visual Novels, weil die spiele ich so oder so. So. Heavens no, the villagers weren't nearly strong enough to fight on equal terms with the demons. Then the only recourse would be to flee the village. They couldn't do that either. To the villagers it was their beloved homeland. It didn't matter how terrifying the demons, but it didn't matter how terrifying the demons were. They wouldn't have run away so easily. Then what did they do? Wouldn't they just get wiped out? Unable to fight and unable to run. All they could do was wait for the village to be destroyed. Then, when everyone had lost hope, their god, Oyashiro-sama, descended unto them. I see. So Oyashiro-sama came down from the sky and beat up all the demons then. You're such a boy, Kei-chan. You always jump straight to using force to resolve things. Shion sighed, a little annoyed, embarrassed. I held my tongue. The thing about Oyashiro-sama, he wasn't a violent god who would beat them up, like you're saying. He was a kind god, filled with love and benevolence. The strength of Oyashiro-sama descended from the heavens couldn't be compared to that of the demons. They didn't even fight, they simply prostrated themselves before his radiant authority. Oyashiro-sama urged them to go back to hell from whence they came. But the demons wept and challenged him, saying they could never return. The world of the demons, too, has harsh commandments. They claimed they had been banished from hell. Demons, who didn't have a place to go, either in hell or in the human world. Of course, they were at fault for attacking the village. They deeply reflected on it and were sorry. As the villagers conversed amongst themselves, little by little they came to pity the demons, and after talking with everyone in the village, they decided to live alongside them. A lot of fairy tales have them being exterminated or driven away, but you don't often hear one where they live in peace. You're right, demons are supposed to symbolize all evils. A story where they decide to live together with humans is certainly strange. When the demons first heard the villagers' invitation, they doubted their ears, but soon burst into tears of joy. The villagers had given them a place to live. It was said that in payment for this good deed, the demons shared their many kinds of power and secrets with the villagers. Shiro-sama was very pleased with this happy exchange. He gave the demons the bodies of humans so that they would be indistinguishable from the villagers. He himself decided to stay on the surface and watch over the everlasting peace between them. A land in which man, demon and god live together. I thought the word demon was a noun meaning evil that needs to be exterminated. A god may have mediated for them, but you don't often hear happy endings like that, where both sides live in harmony. I see, I guess it is kind of interesting. Although the normal fairy tale ends there, it was revised quite a bit during the Edo period into a much longer story. After that, the humans and demons intermixed, and eventually there was no difference between them. So the demons ended up disappearing? No, not at all. Half of them stayed just as they were. The knowledge the villagers had received from the demons basically made them into something inhuman, what people call transcendent. They were well aware the power they had was heresy, and as those below worshipped them, they lived out their lives in secrecy. This story is the root of many derivative tales and pieces of fiction. It's the foundation, I mean, the basis. What do you mean by root? She means the part about the villagers having demon blood. What I mean is, all of the legends from around here are based on the premise that the villagers are descended from demons. Halbdämon, yeah. There was a hint of amusement in Shion's face as she said that. It was like she wanted to say that she, too, had demon blood in her. Is there any proof, though? Maybe it's somehow rooted into historical fact beyond just fairy tales. Oh, my Barakun. Then you do believe the demons really did come out of the swamp and breed with humans? Well, it's not that I don't believe it, but when she said demon, she meant the ones from hell, but in ancient Japan the word wasn't necessarily used to denote only that kind, right? The more well-known use involves the drifting foreigner theory. As the story goes, Westerners who were shipwrecked in nearby seas had such markedly different customs that they were called demons. Japanese people were relatively similar in appearance to other Asians, but everything about those from the West was different. Their physiques, their faces, and their skin color. In Japan terms like red demon and blue demon evoke images especially of Westerners. Lacking in skin pigments, Westerners would sunburn easily and turn red. Being fair-skinned, I think blood vessels appearing on their skin would look blue too. A handful of accidental aliens would drift into Japan. Ah, Aliens! Ich hab's doch gesagt, Aliens! Would drift into Japan and came under persecution being called demons. Ja, hier die Aliens wurden Dämonen genannt, sag ich doch. Fall abgeschlossen. They would flee into the mountains to survive, turn into bandit groups and attack villages for food and the like. Ja, ich weiß, Alien kann man auch so sehen, als einfach nur Fremde. Aber trotzdem, da stand Alien. How does that explanation sound? Maybe it's a bit childish. Takano gave me a weird smile when, having come up with such an impromptu hypothesis, I unconsciously followed it up with self-deprecation. Still, she didn't smile as if to make fun of me. It's not ridiculous. There are a lot of people who subscribe to the drifting foreigner theory, even though nobody actually knows what happened. Were they groups of foreigners who had turned into banditry, or were they really demons who had come from the bottom of the world? Then, Takano-san, which one do you believe? The truth of the matter aside, I'd rather believe the more fantastic explanation. It's more fun that way, isn't it? The answer made her sound a wee bit like a romanticist. Here I'd thought she'd reject unrealistic stories like that. Now then, this is where the fun begins. Takano-san brought an end to her storytelling and waits for a moment as if to tantalize us. Suddenly, Shion looked around as if something had caught her eye. Her head bobbed to and fro, like she was making sure nothing had changed. What's wrong, Shion? I'm sorry, please don't worry about me, about it. Shion pretended as though nothing had happened. Takano-san also made sure nothing had happened, then cleared her throat and broached the next subject. I explained that half of the villagers have demon blood. That blood, they actually say that it's the blood of the kind of demon that eats people. Man-eating demons? That escalated quickly. That blood still runs through the villagers' veins. They say that sometimes the blood awakens from its slumber. I thought the fairy tale had a happy ending, with the humans and demons living in peace, but it began to subtly change into a brutal, bloody story. Well, they eat people. They say that every decade or so they can't help but want to feast on human flesh. The villagers can't eat other villagers. So when this happens, it's said that they descended on the human villages and conducted onikakushi. What's an onikakushi? Broadly speaking, it's when a demon kidnapped someone, when a person is demoned away. They say that the villagers of Onigafuchi would overwhelm unfortunate human villagers in order to kidnap sacrifices. Takano-san's explanation was plain and simple, but when I imagined what it must have been like, it was terrifying. They lose their human reason. The villagers turn into real demons en masse. They attack the villages they loathe in the dirty world of the masses below, and then they kill and eat their sacrifices. So they are no different from demons after all. What did Oyashiro-sama do? Wasn't he supposed to be staying in the village and watching over them? Oyashiro-sama knew about it, of course. Onikakushi isn't indiscriminate. The villagers apparently never kidnapped anyone other than the sacrifices decided upon by their god. In the texts, it's usually 1 or 2 people. A village inhabited by those both human and inhuman. It was like the heartwarming episode's colors had inverted like a negative film, revealing the painful and ugly truth. So on the nights when they raided villages, they would feast on their kidnapped sacrifices, which is why the nights came to be known as Watanagashi. Watanagashi. Tonight's festival was Watanagashi. I just couldn't reconcile the fun festival with the horrible tale Takano-san was telling me. Watanagashi, well, wasn't about giving thanks to the futons we use over the winter or something? Kei-chan, Wata has another meaning, you know. It means entrails. Shion, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Entrails? Oh, yeah, I guess that's true. Like fish guts. Wait, what? Like a jigsaw puzzle, the fun times I had today and Takano-san's grotesque tale clicked together in my mind. Watanagashi, so gut spilling? I didn't think saying that could ever feel so nauseating. Nauseating hier. Was ist das nochmal? Schwindelig, schwindelerregend. Yes! It's as you imagine, my Barakun. Right now, the Watanagashi Festival might just be a somewhat early summer festival occurring every June, but it used to be different. It used to be a ghastly, cannibalistic feast, held on the night the villagers had collected their unfortunate dinner. That can't be true! I had no real reason to say that, but I couldn't help it. My Barakun, you said that Watanagashi is a ritual about purifying futons, right? What do you think the futons filled with cotton, with Wata, represent? Futons are futons! They're beds! They're things for sleeping in! What else could they possibly represent? I was rattling on, desperately attempting to deny the horrible festival that Takano-san was describing. Deep down, however, I found myself understanding all too well what she meant. Futons stuffed with cotton. If the cotton represented entrails in both pronunciation and meaning, then entrail-filled futons would have to be humans. Why don't you think back to the offertory dance Rika-chan performed? Do you know what she was doing up there? No, I don't. I didn't even watch the whole thing anyway. Shh. Kei-chan, you're getting too worked up. Shion grabbed one of my ears, reminding me that this wasn't somewhere I should raise my voice. Even so, I still can't suppress this agitation I feel. Rika-chan was carrying a festival hoe. You've probably realized it already, but that's not a hoe for plowing fields. It's a tool for dissecting human bodies. I didn't see the dance all the way through, so I don't know what kind of performance Rika-chan was putting on after I'd left. When I told this to Takano-san, she kindly explained Rika-chan's dance to me. To summarize what she said, after what I'd seen, Rika-chan would pierce the futons with that hoe, cut them open, and pull out the cotton inside. Das hat man vom Anime gar nicht mitbekommen, dass dieses Festival auch noch eine andere Bedeutung haben kann. Also das finde ich schade, dass sie das aus dem Anime rausgelassen haben. So she'd cut the cotton open one bit at a time and set it afloat. Cut the cotton out. That's the kind of ritual it was. Broadly speaking, it was quite the bombastic ceremony, where they'd rip out the guts and throw them into a basin. And then the ritual was over. It's though that afterwards the villagers, each with a different role, dismantled the flesh piece by piece and feasted upon it. Takano-san's strangely heavy giggle, I felt, for some reason, violent displeasure. Rika-chan, every day during our lunch break, she'd take a rice-pounding mallet into a schoolyard, and she'd work so hard, sweating bullets, to practice for the offertory dance she had done today. All that effort, all that work, Takano-san disgraced it. even though she worked so hard to practice for today. Takano-san, I think you should choose your words more carefully. Kei-chan's pretty naive, so please don't tease him so much. A moment before I opened my mouth to express how angry I was, Shion stopped me. Shion must have been fully aware of how that story made me feel. I'm sorry. I thought you'd like a story with that sort of shock value since you're a boy. Takano-san spoke without a hint of malice as she smiled gracefully. After hearing all that, did you figure out what kind of stuff is in this storehouse, Kei-chan? See, look! Shion pointed out one of the walls, vaguely illuminated by the lantern's light. There was. Mere moments ago, they hadn't held my interest. They were just boring-looking tools lined up on the shelves. Okay. All those uninteresting tools that I didn't understand how to use. They all suddenly took on a new meaning, and I couldn't help but let out a groan. At first they had looked like carpentry tools, like chisels or planes. However, when I thought back, I'd seen pictures of these sorts of tools before. Yeah, they came up in a Japanese history textbook. Yes, on a page introducing the Kaitai or Kaitai Jinjo, or the new text on anatomy. These sorts of things, they are printed realistically in the literature of Germany, capital of the medical world. These aren't carpentry tools. These strangely shaped tools, they're for dissection. Zuerst mein Führer und jetzt auf einmal hier. Deutschland, die Hauptstadt der medizinischen Welt. Okay. Beziehungsweise Capital, Hauptland. Keine Ahnung. Everyone knows that in the Edo period they would dissect the corpses of those who had been put to death in order to gain knowledge about Western medical techniques. Illustrations of the dissection tools they used at the time came up in textbook supplements. The things hung up on this wall all looked exactly the same as those. If you want a scarier way of looking at it, I think of them as cooking utensils. Takano-san, holding the lantern, the only light source in the room, led us along the way. She had the only light, so I had to walk after her, whether I liked it or not. Look! Takano-san illuminated a coiled chain, which left a bigger impression than the other things we saw. The chain in itself was nothing unusual, but further along it were metal fetters that were like hinges, clearly meant for binding people. Kei-chan, look at that! She tapped me on the shoulder and pointed to a restraining table that was clearly shaped like a person. My spine froze. My blood felt like it was turning into sherbet as it crawled up my back. On each of the joints there were things like chains and iron balls attached. It was like the table was searching for its next sacrifice, ready to spread their arms wide and close them in. It's probably a chopping block. I think you'd strap the sacrifice down to prep them for eating. The words a chopping block sent a jolt through my body. When I looked more closely, there were many dark slices carved into it, as though from a knife or a saw. They were the most clear-cut signs of usage you could ask for. It proved that these tools weren't just for show. They were used for their original purpose. If someone was strapped tightly onto this table, they probably wouldn't be able to move even a muscle. The guts would be defenseless, you'd take one of those eerie cooking knives lined up over there, stab them with it, and then you'd slice open the belly and dissect them. I'd heard the stories, but this is incredible. Before coming in here, Shion had mentioned she had a good guess of what was inside, but it seemed to have exceeded her imagination. There's still more, how about it? More fascinating than a wax museum, isn't it? Takano-san had this happy expression like she was visiting a toy store for the first time. I don't get it. This Mio Takano person has nerves of steel. Are these bizarre, grotesque objects that fascinating to her? I, for one, was not enjoying myself. I'll be frank. This was all too weird for me. Still, there was something even more horrifying than all this. That would be none other than Takano-san herself. Takano-san holding the lantern, giving off such a thin beam of light. If she suddenly turned it off, then I would... What would I do when, the next moment, everything went totally dark? That's why I was scared. Takano-san had the only light, and anyway, I was scared. At some point, Shion had started holding onto my shirt sleeve. It was a little annoying to walk like that, but I didn't shake her off. That minor sensation allowed me to feel the presence of an ally, here and now. Before we had even walked halfway through the storehouse, the air I felt on my skin changed completely. These cruel tools lined up all crammed together in this place. Some were horrible ones made to take away sacrifices' freedom, and some were tools made to efficiently disassemble and prepare the bodies for consumption. Those were just the things I understood. There were plenty of other strange-looking objects that I couldn't even guess the purpose of. Now that I was here, I didn't have the slightest desire to hear the details about what sort of terrifying reasons they were meant to be used for. At the very least, they were all completely different from the sort of clean, simple killing function of a katana. Those tools to kill people were obviously constructed in such a way that they could kill people. If that was the goal, then the person you used them on would obviously end up dead. The kinds of tools here, however, were different. The tools that were here were for cutting people, for crushing them, for boiling them and cooking them, and for grinding them. They were tools of torture. They weren't made to kill people. People dying was just an incidental result. Actually, they might not even kill them. If the sacrifices could die during such a horrifying ritual process, that would be nice, but they don't even die in the end. They remain in a state of hellish pain. Perhaps they were only being allowed to live. Only now, in this moment, did I fully realize just how terrifying and fearsome that difference was. People, you see, most of these wouldn't kill them if used properly. Takano-san, as if reading my mind, displayed a shocking smile. Shocking smile. Dann passt. Burning at the stake, the famous method of execution for witches, will kill the person immediately. When the body suffers extreme burns on the skin all over, the decomposition of the skin's chemical makeup produces poison-like symptoms and causes an immense shock to the victim. Though I suppose it's still very cruel. Compared to the guillotine, you have to wait for longer. You have to wait far longer for that to happen. She described such horrors in a strangely medical way. Muss aber nicht unbedingt sein. Ich meine, die Guillotine kann auch mal verkacken. Und vielleicht nur ein bisschen reinschneiden in den Hals. Beziehungsweise den Nacken. Und der andere ist dann, muss nicht unbedingt tot sein. Ist, soweit ich weiß, auch schon vorgekommen. Dass die Leute beim ersten Versuch bei einer Guillotine nicht gestorben sind. Und dann gibt's da noch diese... berühmte Geschichte von diesem einen Seefahrer oder Pirat oder was weiß ich was der war, der eine Mannschaft hatte, die wurden gefangen genommen. Warum auch immer die das uns in der, ich glaube, war das Realschule schon? Wenn ja, dann trotzdem noch relativ früh. Der wurde irgendwie, ja, der war halt irgendwie nicht so ein guter Mensch, wurde halt dann gefangen. Und irgendwie heißt es, dass der Typ... Ah nee, das war aber nicht Guillotine, das war glaube ich einfach nur Axt oder so. Der sollte halt geköpft werden. Und der hatte irgendwie die Auflage bekommen, wenn er nach der Köpfung es schafft, an den Leuten aus seiner Mannschaft vorbei zu laufen, sozusagen, dann werden die Leute, an denen er es vorbeischafft, freigelassen. Und angeblich soll es wirklich so gewesen sein, also wenn es wirklich passiert ist, ich weiß nicht, ob es nur eine Geschichte ist oder tatsächlich so passiert sein soll. Auf jeden Fall hier Kopf abgehackt, der Typ steht auf, rennt los, ohne Kopf, wie so ein Hühnchen oder so, und schafft es an ein paar Leuten von seiner Mannschaft vorbei und soweit ich weiß, wurde der dann irgendwie von den Leuten, die ihn halt verurteilt haben und so weiter, irgendwie auf dem Weg noch irgendwie abgehalten oder so. Ich muss mal kurz gucken. Es war aber relativ... So wie es sich angehört hat, war es eine relativ bekannte Geschichte. Ich muss mal kurz gucken. Ist es sogar Störtebeker gewesen? Ich glaube... Moment. Leben und Legende. Und die Sage von Klaus Störtebeker, sag an. Ah ja. Um die letzten paar Sätze vorzulesen. Also sie war halt an irgendwie so ein Seefahrertyp, keine Ahnung. Störtebeker erbat eine letzte Gnade. Er wollte als erster geköpft werden und diejenigen von seinen Gefährten, an denen er dann ohne Kopf noch vorbeigehen würde, die sollten ihr Leben behalten. Hohnlachend gewährten die Hamburger Ratsherren diese Bitte. Doch so will es die Legende. Klaus Störtebeker stand auf aus seinem Blut, seinen Gefährten noch im Tode treu, und begann an deren Reihe entlang zu gehen, bis der entsetzte Henker ihm einen Knüppel vor die Füße warf. So wurde Klaus Störtebeker, der gewiss kein Engel, aber auf seine Weise ein Anwalt der Armen war, noch im Tode betrogen. Das ist die Sage. Wer es sich's mal ganz durchlesen möchte. Zack, 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 einfügen. Flupp. Das müsste da Ja. Ja, wird angezeigt. Gut. Da kann man sich ganz genau durchlesen. Also was der jetzt ganz genau gemacht hat, alles, das weiß ich jetzt natürlich nicht, aber... Er hat angeblich anscheinend ja hier... Ja... Zumindest hat er sich dann nach der Köpfung noch bewegen können. So. Und an sich ist es ja eigentlich medizinisch gesehen möglich. Vielleicht, nehme ich an. Ich meine, es gab ja auch mal so ein komisches Huhn, das wurde geköpft und es hat dann noch ein paar Wochen oder so oder Tage, entweder Tage oder Wochen oder so, weitergelebt, indem man den restlichen Huhnkörper mit einer Pipette Wasser gegeben hat und eventuell sogar Futter gegeben hat oder irgendwie sowas. Ein kopfloses Huhn hat auch schon eine ganze Zeit lang sogar überlebt. Überlebt in etwas anderem Sinne. Aber ja. So. Zurück zu Higurashi, damit wir uns da nicht ewig lang aufhalten. She described such horrors in a strangely medical way. Shion immediately answered the question I had. Takano-san is a nurse. There's a saying that nothing can scare a doctor. I guess it's true. Oh, and also, there was a method of execution in ancient Rome where they would grill the person. Just like a barbecue. They would cover the person in wire netting and slowly cook them over a charcoal fire. To think the memories of when I went to a day camp with my family would come rushing back now, of all times, so vividly. That's what it was like. Apparently, they wouldn't die too easily for some reason. According to one source, even if they roasted one side of a person to a crisp for an entire night, they would still be conscious and able to speak fluently. That's insane. You'd grill someone the whole day and they'd still be conscious. It's said that ancient Rome, famous for their executions, thought of plenty of ways to execute someone while having the victim stay alive as long as possible. Among them, there was one method where they would open the gut, pull out the intestines like sausages, pull them up with a winch and put them on public display. Shion was behind me, clinging to me. Not just because she was scared. She was protecting her stomach. You would think someone with their intestines pulled out would die instantly, right? Actually, as long as you do it tenderly and thoroughly, it's apparently possible to pull them all out while the person is still conscious. Ich meine, wenn man die Organe an sich nicht verletzt oder so, dann sollten die eigentlich weiter funktionieren. Ja, so unrealistisch hört sich das jetzt auch nicht an. Kennst du auch ein paar Methoden? Ich kenne auch ein paar. Eine der schlimmsten Methoden zu sterben, finde ich diesen eisernen Bullen. Das muss böse gewesen sein. Bei dieser Bulle, der war ja, ich weiß nicht, ob der war aus irgendeinem Metall einfach. Eisen, Bronze, Kupfer oder sonst irgendwie was, keine Ahnung. Ja. Test kennt ihn. Ist halt einfach, war so ein Bulle, warum auch immer das ein Bulle war oder so. Einfach so eine hohle Statue sozusagen, die ungefähr so groß war wie eine richtige Kuh oder richtiger Bulle halt. Mit so einer Klappe beim Bauch. Und da tut man dann einen Typen rein, macht die Klappe zu, verschließt das Zeug und macht unter dem metallenen Viech ein Feuer an. Und dann wartet man. Und der Bulle hitzt sich natürlich auf und weil es natürlich Metall ist und das sehr gut Wärme leitet. Zack, zack, zack. Überall. Überall tut's dann sehr, sehr weh und ja. Ist nicht schön. Und ich nehme stark an, es dauert eine sehr, sehr lange Zeit, bis man da drin gestorben ist irgendwann mal. Dann gibt es ja noch ein paar andere Sachen, die hier auch zum Beispiel in Amnesia relativ am Ende gezeigt werden. Und was gibt's sonst noch? Ja. Pfählen zum Beispiel. Pfählen habe ich irgendwie nie wirklich verstanden. Beziehungsweise finde ich ein bisschen, weiß nicht, schwer, dass das wirklich genau so passiert. Aber, ja. So. Also machen wir es, bringen wir das noch zu einem halbwegs passenden Punkt da hier und dann machen wir mal Pause hier. I felt a sick feeling in my stomach. It was like my organs were coiling up just from Takano-san's stare. Though pulling them out with a winch was a rather exaggerated method. In a more barbaric way, they might slice open the gut, then cut the intestines out and throw them everywhere. It's quite imaginable that they did dreadful things like that too, isn't it? However, those being put to death are conscious. It must be far more terrifying than painful. She spoke with pleasure as if she had come here on a sightseeing trip. I heard Shion gulping multiple times near my ears. Perhaps Hinamizawa, or rather Onigafuchi village, did something like that for the Watanagashi festival. Listen! If you try hard, can't you hear it? I wanted nothing more than to not hear anything at all. So why only at times like these do I begin to hear things I shouldn't be able to? Takano-san, having you realized she'd scared Shion and I enough at this point, smiled soothingly. Then she turned on her heel, raised the lantern and began to walk again. If Takano-san left us here, we'd get even further away from the light. Shion and I, no matter how scared we were forced to follow Takano-san along on her field trip through the ritual storehouse. Ich weiß zwar nicht, ob es jetzt überhaupt irgendwie Sinn macht, aber ich mache trotzdem jetzt schon mal eine Abstimmung, was wir dann als nächstes spielen. Also mit dem Bloodborne, Fallout, Bayonetta, Digimon, Earthbound. Noch irgendwas? Ich glaube nicht. So, bitte mal abstimmen. So, I suppose we've seen a bit of everything. See, this place is interesting, isn't it? She says, raising the lantern high in the center of the storehouse. The dim lighting didn't change, but for some reason it felt like I was able to see all of those horrible tools at once. Kei-chan, look up! Shion stammered while grabbing the nape of my neck. Ah! I couldn't tell because it was so dark, but there were a lot more tools hanging from the ceiling as well. They all looked like they were made of iron bars, but then I figured it out. Cages! For cages, they were very small. Cramped cages, just for one, like a casket. If you got locked up in there, no, you wouldn't get locked up inside it. It was another tool meant for restraining people, where the iron bars would squeeze you tightly. All the so many big and large things of all shapes were hanging down. Takano-san's mention of execution by grilling crosses my mind. We weren't just surrounded on all sides, but these terrifying instruments, things crowding the ceiling, were even hanging over our heads. There are many of these sorts of bird cages among European torture devices. I'm surprised to see them in Japan as well. Kei-chan! Is there something in there? A person? A mummy? Oh, where? Shion desperately pointed to one of the many human-sized bird cages hanging from the ceiling, but I couldn't tell which one she meant. Being that dark, there wasn't any way you could tell if something was there in the first place. I don't see anything. You sure you're not seeing things? Shion didn't seem convinced, but without a means to confirm for ourselves, we couldn't do much but wonder. My Barakun, after seeing this, have you come to believe in all of it? The countless terrible rituals passed down in Hinamizawa? It's got nothing to do with believing in them. Now that I've been shown the real thing like this, there's no possible way to deny it. Even the nations of Europe, with all their beautiful landscapes and legends, were like a maelstrom during the terrible witch hunts in the Dark Ages. It's well known that the era gave birth to countless gruesome forms of torture and execution. Japan was the same way. Didn't it have its own era of hellscape, like torturous feasts because of religious suppression and things of that nature? Hinamizawa itself had such a period, it had that much history behind it. Even in Europe, land of the witch hunts, that was all far in the past, no more than a series of historical events, and in this age, nothing that abnormal would ever happen. That must apply to Hinamizawa as well. Just as Europe has its Dark Age, Hinamizawa had one too. That's how this should be taken. Even if these things all really happened in Hinamizawa, they're all long past. They don't have anything to do with the people living in Hinamizawa right now. My Barakun, you really do like this village. It didn't sound like she was making fun of me. Takano-san gave me a light smile. Takano-san, you're researching whether those customs survived into the present? You're right. You are, right? Shion suggested something that made my heart leap into my throat. Are you telling me that all these horrible things are still going on even today? What I'm about to tell you is a secret, alright? I told you, Shion-chan, because you're an understanding person, but the other villagers don't want to hear it. If things go awry, I could be ganged up on and punished. Shion flashed a devilish smile, as if reveling in the immorality of it. My Barakun, you keep it a secret too, okay? If this gets out, I could suffer Oyashiro-sama's curse, or be made into a sacrifice. If it's the curse, then I wonder what kind of death it'll be this year. If it's the sacrifice, then will I be thrown into the Onikafuchi swamp while still alive? Is it tonight? It is tonight, you know, the night of Oyashiro-sama's curse. Takano-san said, bringing her face right up close to ours. As if to say that if she had the choice, she'd rather suffer that curse. That was what she seemed to be implying. Takano-san took a fairly worn notebook out of her paper bag, then began to flip through its pages. There were all sorts of references and newspaper clippings attached to them, and it had all manner of things written inside. The letters were very small and bunched together, so I couldn't tell at a glance what it was about. What I'd really like to do is search through the National Library for newspapers from the era, but here it is. A photocopy of a page from some book was slid into the notebook, and it, too, was written in small, tight lettering. Like the other pages, I couldn't tell what it was about just by glancing at it. This is a story that actually happened. It was around the end of the Meiji era. They discovered an unknown mangled corpse, the victim of a murder in Onigafuchi village. An old newspaper clipping attached to the page spoke of something that was no mere rumor or fairy tale. We don't have most police documents from the time anymore. So it's all based on oral traditions and memories. See, it's not very clear, but it looks like a cutout of a newspaper from the Meiji era. Never before has there been a corpse treated with such cruelty and inhumanity. Could it be the work of a demon? Being a copy of a copy, it was very hard to make out, but it was more than enough to make me feel strangely tense. Da machen wir beim nächsten Mal weiter. Kein Bock mehr. Ich merke auch langsam, wenn ich jetzt noch weitermachen würde, dann würde ich mich wieder hier sehr, sehr oft versprechen und das, ne, nicht schön. Darum machen wir dann beim nächsten Mal da hier weiter. Gut. Für was wurde abgestimmt? Fallout 4. Eine Stimme. Okay, Test. Dann spielen wir Fallout 4. Zumindest nach der Pause. Was müssen wir da eigentlich aktuell machen?